Good afternoon, everybody, and a very warm welcome to our weekly Learn in Your Lunchtime webinar, where we just take a bit of time out during the middle of the day, maybe while we're grabbing a bite to eat or something to drink, and talk about what's happening in the world of student success. We have the Student Success Coach community on a Facebook group and a couple of other associated groups, and one of those that we'll be talking about in more detail today is the CFA group with Jhan Burger. So unfortunately, Jhan won't be joining us today. We've got a pre-recorded message from Jhan, so you'll be able to get his insights as well as access to a number of the CFA courses that he's been working on rolling out in the last couple of months. But very importantly, we've got Tracy with us. So with exams coming up, we thought that it'll be a good opportunity just to make sure everybody is well prepared, energized, and zeroed in on making sure that their exam season is going to be successful. And a lot of what we'll talk about today is going to be relevant for any topic in addition to CFA, but we are specifically geared up to support CFA candidates and people that are going through the CFA exams. So please do pop your questions in the chat, and we'll pick those up and get to them during the course of the conversation. And it'll either be a CFA course that we can provide you access to or a more generic challenge that you might have with exams, and then either myself or Tracy can answer those. And really the primary intention of these webinars and our courses is to make sure that you have access to the tools and the resources and the content that will help you be a successful student. So Tracy, over to you. Maybe I don't think you need any introduction on the YouTube channel, but just give us your sense. I know here in South Africa, we always talk about when the jacarandas start to bloom, you need to make sure that you've started studying for your exams at the end of the year. And it just is a period of time that just goes incredibly quickly. So you do want to make sure that you're well prepared. But Tracy, over to you. Just introduce yourself and your thoughts on preparation for exam season.
I will do. I've got so much to say. I haven't been on for a while. Thank you for having me. I giggled when you said the jacarandas bloom. I mean, what if you live in Stellenbosch, right? Well, surely you clearly are a UP boy.
Exactly.
In any case, I love the idea of this topic because as we do with so many of our topics for Student Success Coach, we focus on giving students and students advice on passing exams. So this has got many different elements. It's not only about the CFA, but it's just general sort of exam tips and I guess just helping you. And it's a good time of the year, as Peter was saying, the jacarandas are blooming. So it's very, very relevant right now. So we think that it's a good, we thought it was good timing. The other thing is with the CFA level 1 exams looming, I know a lot of people are stressing about that. It seems like it's, it's one of those things that there isn't a lot out there to find out about. And there's a lot of second guessing, which causes panic before the exams. So that's another reason why we think this is really relevant. With the Student Success Coach, something I often stress is that what we're sharing now is our opinion. So you could go to many different people, many different, professional CFA lecturers or within the CFA institute, and people will have different advice for you. But what we are coming at is from our own perspective, both Peter having worked as the student success coach for a while now, and my background in student and graduate recruitment being sort of over 20 years. I think we've got some pretty good tips to share. Pete, as always, it's great when the audience engage. I love to see, who they are, where they're studying, what year of studying, if they've perhaps graduated, specifically if they're about to write the CFA, shortly. And most importantly, when you guys ask questions on the chat, we're able to give you very specific answers, which not only help you, but all the people, they're very relevant for the other people and your peers who are also dialed in.
Absolutely, Tracy. So I just have made a note of that up on the screen and in the chat to ask any questions, and we'll certainly get to them. And I've also put the link to the CFA Facebook group for everyone to join up. And that's also a place that you can ask questions anytime. You don't have to wait for a webinar. We have CFA experts standing by there to help you with your questions and your challenges. And it can be on any topic, as we have chatted about in a previous webinar with Jhan. He covers all the main topic areas in CFA, and he really gives you a lot of the memory tips and tricks to help you understand those concepts, get to grips with them, and then importantly, recall them successfully on your exam day, which is really what we're all working towards. And I think in the CFA context is what it's all about. Those CFA exams are quite intense. And as Jhan will tell you, and we'll play a clip from Jhan just now, you can't get through all the CFA material. It's literally impossible. So what he provides you with his decades of experience and teaching of thousands of CFA students around the world is insight into the material that really matters, and that if you focus on will give you the best chance of successfully passing your CFA. So I think, Tracy, I mean, maybe just to get the conversation going, in any subject, and particularly it appears to be the case in CFA, it is also important to be quite strategic. I always counsel people to do past exam papers, just so that you get an idea of how the material is tested, because you can't go through your entire textbook. You literally can't learn all the content, certainly in bigger and more complex subjects and degrees that many of you are tackling. Obviously, you don't want to take a chance and be too selective, but with limited time, and especially if you're also working as well, you need somebody that helps you focus in on what you can spend your limited time on to get the best results in your exams. And certainly for CFA, I think that's absolutely what Jhan is able to provide you in your courses. Okay, so let's play the clip from Jhan, and always good just to hear from Jhan and get his insights. So let's see what Jhan has to say in terms of just saying hi to everybody.
Hi, are you studying towards the CFA Level 1 exam? Well, I'd like to help. My name is Jhan Burger. I'm the founder of AnalystSecrets.com, and I've been teaching CFA for the last 13 years for the world's largest prep provider, Kaplan Tracer, as well as for the world's largest firms. If you name a top 10 investment bank or asset manager, I've probably taught the employees. I've definitely taught the employees of those firms. What I've done is I've compressed all the tips and tricks, mnemonics, diagrams, rude and crude way of remembering things into a single set of videos that I'd like to share with you. Please have a look. I'd love for you to have a look at what I've garnered over the last decade plus of teaching this, and it's just really an assimilation of all of the cool tips and tricks and ways of learning things. Think about it as a booster pack, a revision set of material that'll help you perhaps at the end of your studies when you're trying to get your head into recall mode, but as well as in the tuition phase before you try to jump into the nitty-gritty detail and you want to get an idea of the big picture. I've tried to assimilate everything that I know about this exam after more than 27 sittings of the Level 1 exam, at least teaching students towards that many sittings, and I want to share them with you. So have a look, let me know what you think. I'd love to have your feedback. Thanks for your time.
Great. I think that's such wise advice. And, as we've spoken about on a previous webinar and what you'll experience in all of Jhan's courses, is the very sort of humorous approach that he takes and helpful mnemonics and memory tricks that, he's developed over many years, in which he packages in his courses to give you that booster pack that we sort of spoke about just now. But Tracy, maybe just to get the conversation going as we're waiting for one or two questions to pop up in the chat. Let's talk broadly about CFA before we sort of go into exam preparation. Just again, from your perspective, the value and the importance of CFA. You've done recruiting and graduate recruiting in some of the biggest banks around the world. Just remind us again of the importance and the relevance of CFA in that context, and the weight that it gives a CV, and the decision that someone might go through the CFA, and the opportunities that it might give to them in future. Your thoughts on that?
So yes, Peter, coincidentally, because I love recruiting students, I could have been in any industry, but coincidentally, I've been in investment banking for my entire career, and therefore have been party to many debates about doing the CFA. From my perspective as a recruiter, I was finding that students were coming in, often students potentially even right up to master's level were coming into the bank either with a sound knowledge, having studied finance, completely comfortable across all the different disciplines and areas, or maybe very niche, so potentially an actuary who has, or maybe a financial engineer or a quant who have deep knowledge in a certain area. And then the other was somebody who was perhaps not studying any finance related subject, but for example, an engineer who wanted to get into banking. So there were different benefits for different people. Now, there's a big debate about whether you should do a master's or whether you should do CFA. And I think it's all about making sure you have the breadth of skills. So for someone who is very niche and focused and specialist, then the CFA gives access to additional skills that mean even if you go into a very focused area like structuring or financial engineering, you have a bigger picture of the economics and corporate finance and equities, etc. Then the other is somebody like an engineer, and there are many other similar examples. They are already coming in with solid math skills, and they've got very structured way of thinking. They are skilled to be a banker, but come in just without the actual financial skills. And we used to say something like a CFA would be hugely beneficial. I mean, even just through the interview process, it's a whole lot easier to talk credibly and be, commanding or, of the catching the attention as a potential deal maker one day of the people interviewing you if you're speaking with this extra knowledge. The other thing is, we used to, at Rand Merchant Bank, when I was there, we used to have there is a class of program. And that was a time where the CFA was very relevant because the class of program attracts people with non-relevant backgrounds who have excelled over the years into investment banking. They want to become bankers. And the CFA was a really strong bridge. So that was where we came to know it most. As it's quite difficult because as a student, you have nothing but study loans. So it's very expensive to do CFA 1, and it's tricky in your penultimate or ultimate year of study. And a lot of organizations actually pay for you to do it. A lot of banks will pay for you to do it if it's relevant once you start as a graduate. But even if you were to, in an ideal world, I posted actually about this, Peter, the other day on LinkedIn. I said, so many banks don't necessarily have the budget for a full bursary of, 200,000, Rand. Whereas they could actually sponsor potential, graduates or candidates for their organization on the CFA, which is a significantly less amount of an investment, and it's got a huge return on equity. So anyway, you can see that I have a lot to talk about the CFA because it's something quite close to my heart. And that was why I really enjoyed when you and I started collaborating with Jhan, because he comes from the other side. We can say, go and do it. And he's saying, okay, this is how you do it.
Tracy, I think that's very good sort of industry level perspective on the CFA and good context if people aren't familiar with the CFA. So also just wanted to say good afternoon to Samia. And Nicole's also sort of made a comment in the chat, which I'll just pop up onto the screen, saying she's a BCom accounting and finance graduate and writing the presumably CFA exam on the 19th of November. Biggest concern there is the MPS, which I've now learned is the minimum passing score, and somehow making sure I fall above that line. So if I recall correctly from what I've also learned about CFA in my interaction with Jhan, what they do is they determine a pass rate almost based on how well everybody else has done. So it's almost a calculated pass rate. It's not a pre-published score necessarily. It's very much a calculated or aggregated score. And I guess the best strategy is still just to do your best. But Nicole sort of raised that as a little bit of a concern. Tracy, are you aware of how they calculate the minimum passing score and how that would play into exam preparation?
So in actual fact, I don't believe it's a set score. And you can see, Peter, you and I haven't done the exam because we would definitely know this. I do believe it's relative to the amount of people writing the exam and the marks. And it is something that I'm going to put that on LinkedIn, and I'm going to post that on LinkedIn and ask for some advice. I often post about these things because you get, and in fact, if you guys follow me on LinkedIn, you will see that there's a wealth of information out there. But we've got our personal guru, Jhan, who will fill us in on how that actually works. And we can put it on our Student Success Coach Facebook page for you, Nicole.
Yeah. And also what I wanted to do is exactly that, Tracy, was just to share the a Facebook group that we've set up whereby you can ask these questions, and Jhan and even others in the group will be able to answer those. So let's just scroll through some of the value and some of the discussion that we've had happening in the CFA group fairly recently. So of course today's webinar, just counting down to the exams. And then, for example, we will post new courses. So this week, we launched a new course on financial statement analysis. And this is actually at the level 2 of the CFAs. So in there, pension accounting, financial ratios, plan assets, funded status, etc. So, Jhan teaches in all of these courses the tips and tricks and mnemonics and everything that we speak about in these webinars, which are then packaged for you within each of these individual courses. And then what's fantastic is, we'll often also share information about the CFA program more generally, so that you can find information about it and how it works. So Jabran, who is our group expert, will also often run a poll and talk about elements of the course topics and the curriculum in the CFA. So here, for example, he's talking about financial statement analysis at level 2 and makes reference to Jhan's course and just extracts some of the material from that course and pops it in the Facebook group just to get some conversation going. And the point really is to highlight that this is a great place to ask exactly those types of questions that Nicole has raised. Very useful, obviously, to get it in a live webinar like today, but also very useful to get the value from people within the group and experts that are willing to help and perhaps who have been through CFA and are willing to give of their knowledge. So there, for example, we see we posted the estimated CFA results dates for upcoming 2022 exams. So there you have the dates, and I think it's quite comprehensive across level 1, 2, and 3. Lots of tips there as well. Yes, Tracy.
I'm sorry to butt in. What I was thinking, looking at this now, it's really like a hand holder for somebody doing the CFA. It's the first time I'm seeing the material, and it's literally covering every element of support and teaching that anyone would need doing the exam. It's fabulous.
Absolutely, Tracy. So, I mean, if you were to just, possibly even just have a look at some of the material that we posted, you'll see obviously Jhan traveling the world, teaching his various courses, but also extracted, as you say, from the courses, some of the worksheets and some of the insights and some of the topics, whichever we find is useful. And that we feel, people might be needing a little bit of assistance with. Exactly, as you say, it's a little bit of a guide, a little bit of a support, a little bit of a prompt, to talk about these aspects of the CFA curriculum, really always with the primary intention of helping people to be successful. So as you mentioned, there's those formulas that we talk about. And again, because there's so much volume, you can't get through all of this in one sitting. So it's often nice just to have this group that just prompts you. And, if you're able to check in every now and again, it might just be that little tip or that trick that you find so useful. And I think a lifeline, as you say, leading up to exams, you can see where people are struggling. You can see what people are talking about. You can ask questions here. So here we talk about emergency deferrals of the fees that you might have paid for your exams. We talk about, how to become a member in the different CFA institutes. We even post roles that are suitable to CFA candidates, so you get an idea of what you could be eligible for once you get through the CFA exam. We share, a range of courses related to a CFA, if it's in the financial environment or from a data science perspective. All of these are, fantastically relevant and useful and insightful for people doing a CFA. And as you mentioned, Tracy, going into the financial industry, having a better knowledge of things like data science and Python and programming in order to do that higher level analysis and do the work that investment bankers and analysts would sort of be doing, is everything that we're geared up to provide you with in the Facebook group. So there, for example, you can see Jabran commenting on our CFA Level 2 equity investments course and the weighting that it carries and some of the insights that you get from that course. And then again, in the different levels of CFA, what you'll actually learn. And then just some Q&As, the course launches, for example, even right down to the items allowed in the CFA exam room. This is sort of really interesting. There's a CFA exam calculator. There's quite strict protocols. Your passport, eyeglasses, you're not allowed the case, for example. And there are sort of very minor other additional items that are allowed. It'd be terrible to spend all this time and money preparing, and studying for the exam, and then you walk in and you haven't thought about the protocols of actually being allowed into the exam room and sitting the exam. So these tips and tricks just all really help make sure that you are successful. And here we can see a fantastic example of a question to me. Says they registered for CFA Level 1, also busy learning how to build financial models using Udemy, as I mentioned. And then which site, would we have advised to get financial statements they can start building financial models for. And there we can see Jabran sharing the SEC filings website. So once again, just lots and lots of valuable insights for people to take advantage in the Facebook group. So Tracy, I think maybe you want to comment just on the importance and the role of community and groups in being confident and prepared for exams. Do you think that makes a big difference to be part of a group like this, or is it just a distraction? I mean, is this going to detract from the work that you need to do to get your exams? How important are communities and Facebook groups like this?
I actually was chatting to a friend a little bit before the call because he's recently gone through the CFA and I wanted to get some tips from him. And interestingly, I said, what is the importance of being part of groups? Well, in fact, we kind of both said it at the same time. He was like, it's so important. And I was thinking, how important is it? I think it's critical because, with the CFA, there is a certain amount you can prepare. And in fact, a lot of it is conceptual. And Jhan and previous papers can really assist you with that. But I think that there's a sort of a large part of it is the unknown, and that's a part where people can panic and second guess. Like Nicole's question, who I've been thinking about, it's really hard to know you're going to achieve a goal when you don't know what the goal is. So I really think that the community, not only for the fact that you've got people who've done the CFA who are actually giving advice, but also and the fact that potential CFAs can ask questions, but also that people can sort of interact with each other and share the struggles and the questions that they've had. I think the two things from my perspective that always worked were previous papers. I believe you get when you sign up, 2 previous papers to prepare. And there are, I think the Kaplan Schreiser sells previous papers, or, there are ways in which you can get additional, because apparently the book or the reading that you do to prepare is quite different from what they actually ask. And then the other thing is to have to be part of a community or a group. And I remember when we put our graduates through CFA 1 during their first year as, at the bank, I think they used to have a study group on Saturday mornings or so on. And different people used to teach, and people would just kind of just talk CFA to get comfortable. It's so different to many other exams where you know what you're going into, you know what you're expected to know. And this is a lot of prep for, things for a moving target, which is, I think, why it causes a lot of stress. They say, I think it's like 320 hours or so is put into preparing for level 1. I mean, that's a lot of time to then channel down into, a couple of hours exam. So you need all the help you can get.
Yeah, Tracy, I absolutely agree with you. And I think that I think communities are important, as you mentioned, for, those study groups and for just building your confidence about a curriculum or a degree that you might be going through. But obviously, like anything, it's got to be managed and done in the context of your primary goal, which is to be successful in those exams and to get through the material. And something like Facebook is very powerful for creating communities. But the last thing we want people to, on Facebook and sort of start scrolling endlessly instead of going back to their studies. So I guess, that would be one thought from my perspective, is you have the convenience of social media in creating a space for these communities, but equally then the distractions that brings in. And you and I have spent a lot of time talking about, managing distractions in terms of being a successful student, and, how to control those distractions and make sure that you, are quite disciplined and organized with your time to beat procrastination. And that's contained in a lot of the other webinars, which you'll find on the YouTube channel, and which I've just put a link to subscribe in the comments there. Then what I wanted to do was just to show everybody, exactly what is available from Jhan, and what, his sort of range of courses is looking like. And let me just pop the link to his profile in the chat right now, because you can then pop on there. We are still releasing a lot of courses, and you can expect to see a lot more coming through. But let's just scroll down quickly and see what is already available. So there you can see first couple of courses that have done very, very well. Derivatives at level 1, economics at level 1. Both of those very, very well rated by students. And Jhan is an excellent teacher, so that's coming through in these ratings. Ethics and conduct, a very important part of the level 1 exam. And in that course, he actually gives you a little bit of a strategy about passing ethics, and he goes through, obviously, the core content. And then on the right there at the top, that's a course that if you're going into level 2, is very useful to do, just to get a sense of what the differences are between level 1 and level 2, because there are some big differences. And it's very important just to get a handle on what those differences are and how you would approach level 2 slightly differently from level 1. And I think, Tracy, previously, we gave away a laptop when we asked people how many levels there are in CFA, and the answer is 3. And if I can recall correctly, the person that was able to answer that the fastest in the chat won themselves a laptop, which was fantastic. But the point I'm making is that it is a hierarchical series of exams. You can be very successful just doing level 1 and going on into your career. That's fantastic. But if you are willing to go through the levels, obviously those opportunities will be sort of maybe more lucrative the higher that you're able to progress in CFA. But a course like that one on the top right there, it just positions you for success as you move from a level 1 to level 2. And then, of course, just to pop them all up on the screen so that we can see them in one go. You've got quantitative methods. So that's also very important. A lot of the sort of statistical analysis. And as Tracy mentioned, neither of us have done the CFA exams. So I certainly would need to do that course to get my knowledge of quantitative methods to a decent level. Corporate issuers, equity investments, portfolio management, and these are all the different topic areas of the CFA curriculum. And also, if you're already in industry, this is the type of work that you'll be doing and that you might be asked to do as part of a team of investment bankers or analysts. And so it's always very useful to be able to pop back into courses like these just to get a refresher, if you like, on these.
Pete, I always butt in when I have sudden thoughts, sudden pearls of wisdom. I'm so sorry. But what I was thinking is, even if you are a derivatives trader, for example, there's huge, as I was touched on before, there's huge benefits. Well, it's almost imperative to understand the different areas of the bank and how they work and how they kind of leverage off each other. So somebody who is I'm saying not only banks, but portfolio, asset managers and so on, they're also interlinked. Any deal involves so many different areas. And this is an exam that actually encompasses all. So yeah, keep asking questions on the chat, and we'll give you some answers. But also tell us if you're doing the exam now, coming up soon in November, and you've got any particular worries or concerns, or would like some advice. Pop your questions in the chat, and we will try to help you.
Absolutely. So hi there to our LinkedIn user. And fantastic to see the LinkedIn users also being able to view this webinar, which is a fantastic improvement that we've made in the last couple of months. And we're broadcasting live out to the CFA Facebook group, our LinkedIn channel, and also the YouTube channel. So all of those users being able to access this content. So yes, absolutely. If you do you have any questions about upcoming exams, please do ask them in the chat. Great to see Vanessa joining us. Thank you, Vanessa, for joining us and supporting us today. And just a reminder that we are talking about CFA exams, which are coming up and for which we've got a range of fantastic courses, which are taught by Jhan Burger, our CFA exam tips and tricks specialist, who has taken the time to package his knowledge and make it available into our Smart Tips online courses. So going through the curriculum and going through his material is absolutely a vital step in preparing for your exams. But I think to Tracy's point as well is, and which Jhan often also reminds his students, it's also about the discipline and the structure and getting enough sleep and eating well and getting sufficient exercise and making sure that you cut out things, from your life that perhaps could distract you and take time away from being able to focus on the curriculum and the content that will help you be successful for your exams. So Tracy, maybe let's just take that direction a little bit then. What does a sort of good exam preparation schedule sort of look like? And what have you seen students find useful in terms of getting into a healthy and a balanced rhythm in the sort of 6 weeks leading up to their exams of any kind of exams?
So I'll go back to at the beginning, for those who haven't yet started studying. At the beginning, I think they say 5 or 6 months. I think it's really important then. They say it's a marathon, not a sprint. I think it's very important. And yes, for all exams, but I think critical because of the amount of content with the CFA is to lay it out and not get too wrapped up. I mean, the whole ethics and I had to actually remind professional standards, that whole section can become absolutely overwhelming. So I think that separating it out and being structured, and again, in the actual exam, understand what the structure of the exam is going to be and be quite strict about your sort of boundaries and the separations. And the other thing is to say, it sounds cheesy in a way, Pete, but it's not. It's just to remember that this is not the be all and end all. It's kind of positioned as the Holy Grail because of the power of it being such a powerful qualification. But it's not the be all and end all that you pass level 1 first try. I remember when we were in the beginning of many years ago, when we would actually ask someone, how many times did you have to do level 1 to pass? Or it was actually quite relevant. People would put on their CV, they would say, first time pass, These days, people understand it's actually not that easy. It's an international exam. You're being pitted against kids who've grown up doing internships on Wall Street. And you learn so much in that first try of the first level 1 that's going to benefit you, that I almost say, if you're unsure, don't not do it. Have a crack. Yes, the cost is going to be a thing. But in terms of if you're coming up now, we're so close and you're starting to panic, I think the biggest gift you can give yourself is to say, if I fail, it's not the end of the world. The fact that I'm even doing it is so huge. So keep perspective on that. That is going to keep your stress down. So you could pass, you could fail, you don't know. You're doing it. The learning up to it is exponential. The lack of sleep is exponential. And then whether you pass or not, you're so well equipped to redo it again in July. The one thing that's really tricky is the pressure of when you're doing it. The benefit of doing it as a student, if you can afford it or find a sponsor, is because if you do level 1 in your first year as a graduate, the pressure's on you and you're trying to prove yourself and you're doing information, client pitches at 3 a.m. It's very hard to incorporate CFA 1. But then again, if you're part of the group of graduates who are all doing it together, there's a lot of support in that. And I used to find that the grads would come into the office a few hours earlier than the day started. And then when the day ended, would spend an hour or two and they would do it together. And I think that was quite a good. Don't just sit. There is so much information to plow through. Don't just sit alone. Talk about it. Talk through the questions. Be part of that community. And keep the perspective that I was telling you about. You're so nearly there now. Don't give up. Don't give up.
Yeah, I think just to back up what you're saying there, Tracy, that self-induced stress of trying to do it perfectly the first time, or trying to focus too much on passing rather than the process, that can have the unintended consequence of closing your mind down and restricting your ability to limit information, restricting your ability to think creatively and properly, when you're studying and on the day of the exam. So I also advise students, the last night before cramming can also do more damage than good, because you're going to start cluttering your mind, and especially on the morning, stay away from other people that are also cramming and asking last minute questions. Just be focused and go into the exam and do your best. And exactly as you said, it's not going to be the end of the world. In many, degrees and qualifications and CFA, as you mentioned, you will have another chance to do it. And yes, another 6 months might seem like a long time. And you might be a bit hard on yourself when everybody else has passed and gone on and perhaps started their careers or moved up the ladder. But actually, I think, from our perspective, Tracy, looking back over 20 years of being in the workplace, 6 months here or there, even a year, is actually not a major train smash. The important thing is not to give up, but to take what you've learned from that first attempt and then apply that into the next efforts that you make. And I think just to finish off with Tracy, I don't see any more questions coming through. That again is one of the benefits of signing up with one of Jhan's courses. He's seen so many students go through multiple cycles of doing the CFA. He himself has taught students through 27 sittings of the CFA. So the experience that he's got of what works and why people fail and what you learn from going through it multiple times, you get access to him in his courses and in the Facebook group and through interacting with us and in this community that we're creating here on YouTube. So, Tracy, I think we'll leave it there. I think we had 1 or 2 questions, which was fantastic. And I'm sure that there was lots of value for people that did attend. And if you are writing exams, any kind of exams, in the coming months, Tracy and I absolutely do wish you everything of the best. Tracy, with that, would you like to just say goodbye?
I was thinking, still going back to Nicole's question at the beginning, it's so difficult when it's one of these exams that is relative, because you actually could shoot the lights out and there could be people who shoot the lights out more than you. So all you can do is do your best. And know that the benefit of having it ultimately is worth the slog. And I wish you lots of luck.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a super Friday afternoon.
Have a good weekend. Bye.